The Academy's training room was a dome of reinforced glass and shadowed steel, echoing faintly with the hum of gravitic stabilizers. Around the perimeter, cadets whispered in nervous tones, their eyes locked on the small creature sitting motionless at the center of the arena. It looked like a nightmare compressed into youth, a sleek, four-limbed beast covered in midnight fur that shimmered faintly under the lights. Its pupils were slitted, its tail flicking in short, irritated jerks. Every muscle rippled with the suppressed violence of its species, the Tarsk, apex predators bred for war during the border conflicts, and later banned from all sentient combat operations. This one was different. Smaller. Younger. Barely a meter tall at the shoulder. A pup. The human cadets had taken a half step back when it entered. The alien cadets, taller, scaled, feathered, or chitinous, had stepped back even farther. Only Corporal Ellis Dane hadn't moved. He stood quietly near the beast, his training armor pale under the sterile lights. His face was unreadable, not fear, not pity, not arrogance. Just calm observation. The kind a field medic gives a wounded soldier. The instructor, Commander Geller, a broad-shouldered Andari with translucent skin and iron-gray eyes, scanned the line of cadets. "This exercise," he said, voice amplified, "is about control, of yourselves, and of the life before you. The Tarsk pup was bred to kill on command. Today, it will learn not to. And so will you." Someone muttered, "That thing shouldn't even be here." The instructor's mouth curved in something like a grin. "Then it's the perfect lesson." He tapped the console on his wrist. The doors sealed with a hiss. The air tightened. A collective breath froze in the room. The predator pup turned its head, and locked eyes with the human. A low growl built in its chest, vibrating through the floor. Ellis didn't flinch. He slowly crouched, bringing himself level with its gaze. "Easy, buddy," he said softly. And for a heartbeat, impossibly, the growl stopped. The sound of the locks engaging was like the clink of fate closing its teeth. Steel plates slid across the only exit. The observation deck above dimmed to a ghostly haze, and the cadets' reflections stared back at themselves in the glass. Commander Geller's voice came through the intercom, calm but edged with cold intent. "No one leaves until the test concludes." The cadets shifted uneasily. One of the reptilian trainees hissed under his breath. "What test?" Ellis didn't answer. His focus was on the creature, the pup. Its nostrils flared as it took in the human scent, the scent of iron, ozone, and fear barely held in check. Its claws scraped once against the floor, leaving thin grooves. The silence that followed was total, alive, trembling. Then the pup moved. It didn't charge, not yet. It crept, slow and deliberate, shoulders rising and falling with predatory rhythm. The other cadets backed against the wall, their armor's servos whining softly. "Dane!" someone barked. "Get back!" But Ellis stayed where he was, lowering one knee to the ground, one hand raised, palm open, empty. "You're not gonna hurt anyone," he said gently, his voice carrying despite the acoustics. "Not today!" The Tarsk pup's ears twitched. It sniffed again, confused. Its instincts screamed for dominance, for violence, but something in the human stillness broke the rhythm. Predators were used to fear, to prey that moved or screamed. Not this calm. Not this patience. Above, Geller's translucent face betrayed nothing. Only a faint smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "Remarkable," he murmured. The pup's breathing slowed. Its tail flicked once, twice, and then, like a child learning to trust, it sat back on its haunches. Ellis let out a slow breath. Around him, the other cadets exhaled too, though they didn't realize they'd been holding it. One dared to whisper, "How the hell did you do that?" Ellis didn't look away from the pup. "Same way you calm a scared dog," he said quietly. "You let it know it's not alone." The instructor's voice crackled over the intercom again. "Interesting. Now let's see what happens when we raise the stakes." The lights flickered red. Ellis's head snapped up. "What the hell are you doing?" Geller didn't reply, only pressed another command. A second door began to open. and from within the darkness beyond, something much larger began to move. The hiss of hydraulics filled the dome as the secondary door rose, venting a cold mist that rolled across the floor like smoke. Every cadet froze. Even the predator pup stiffened, nostrils flaring wide, catching a scent it knew all too well. From the dark came a sound that wasn't a growl so much as a deep, resonant thrum. A shape emerged, larger, leaner, twice the pup's size, its hide darker, eyes burning with that same molten gold. Its breath steamed in the chill. The adult. Geller's voice echoed above, smooth, clinical. A baseline Tarsk Alpha. It recognizes the young, and it recognizes threat. Let's see how instinct meets command. Sir! One of the cadets shouted, panic lacing her voice. That thing could kill all of us. That, said Geller, is why the doors are sealed. The older Tarsk stalked forward. The floor trembled under its weight. Its gaze swept the room until it found the pup, and then the human crouched beside it. A snarl rippled through the dome, vibrating in Ellis's ribs. The pup yelped and shrank back, pressing against his leg. Instinct. Submission. Ellis stayed perfectly still, though his pulse hammered in his throat. His brain screamed, "You can't reason with it." But he didn't move. Didn't draw his sidearm. Didn't even blink. Behind him, the cadets fanned into formation, rifles ready, breathing sharp and shallow. Hold fire, Geller commanded through the intercom. I want to see what the human does. Ellis's voice was quiet but firm. Sir, if this is a containment test, you're pushing too far. Geller only replied. Then show us why you humans are so proud of your empathy. The Tarsk Alpha took another step. Its claws clinked against the deck plating. Then another, head lowering, pupils narrowing into slits. The pup whimpered softly. Ellis whispered, Don't run. He wasn't sure who he was saying it to, himself, or the creature. The Alpha stopped 2 meters away. Its hot breath brushed against Ellis's faceplate. Every instinct screamed to step back. Instead, he lowered his hand, slow as gravity, until his fingers brushed the pup's shoulder. And then something strange happened. The pup leaned forward and released a low, wavering cry, a sound halfway between a growl and a plea. The Alpha froze. The cadets stared, stunned. Ellis's voice barely rose above the hum of the room. That's right, he murmured. It's just a kid. For a moment, everything held still, the predators, the humans, the air itself. And then the Alpha blinked. Once. A deep, guttural rumble filled the space, not of rage, but of recognition. It stepped back. And the whole room exhaled. Ellis didn't smile. He just kept his hand where it was. See? He whispered. Easy, buddy. For several long seconds, no one moved. Even the hum of the station seemed to fade under the weight of silence. The Alpha stood still, its breathing deep and measured, pupils dilated but no longer locked in aggression. The pup remained pressed against Ellis, trembling but quiet, its heartbeat quick and fragile under his palm. Commander Geller's voice finally broke the stillness. Fascinating. The Alpha recognizes calm submission. Not fear, not defiance, but equilibrium. He stepped down from the observation deck, his boots clicking sharply against the metal stairs. The cadets stiffened at his descent. No one ever saw the commander leave the safety of the control platform. Stay where you are, he ordered, walking into the dome. Let's test the bond. Ellis turned his head slightly. Sir, I don't think that's. But Geller was already moving closer. He carried a small control sphere in one hand, its surface flickering with pale light. This device emits a neural irritant, mild to us, but to a Tarsk, it mimics an aggression pheromone. The cadets murmured, horrified. Ellis stood slowly, placing himself between the commander and the creatures. You can't just. I can't, Geller said quietly. And I must. You humans keep preaching empathy, control, understanding. Let's see if it holds under biological truth. He pressed the control sphere. A faint vibration pulsed through the air. The Alpha's nostrils flared. Its muscles tensed instantly, lips curling back to reveal serrated teeth. The pup yelped, snapping its head toward the commander. Gela! Ellis barked. Stop it! Too late. The Alpha lunged. The world collapsed into chaos. Motion, noise, shock. The cadets scattered, shouting, rifles rising. The creature's roar hit like thunder, slamming into the sealed walls. Geller stumbled backward, the sphere dropping from his hand and skittering across the floor. Ellis didn't think. He moved. He threw himself between the commander and the Alpha, both hands up, shouting. Stay! The word hit like a crack in the air. Not a command, a plea backed by something primal. The Alpha froze mid-stride, claws screeching across the deck. For a heartbeat, the world held its breath. Then, slow as the tide receding, the creature's body began to ease. It let out a low, uncertain rumble and took one staggering step back. Ellis turned his head slightly toward Gela without looking away from the Alpha. You wanted to test empathy, sir? He said, voice trembling but steady. That's what this looks like. The commander said nothing. His expression was unreadable, somewhere between awe and fear. The Alpha's golden eyes flicked from human to pup, then to the sealed door. Its breathing slowed. It seemed to understand the test was over, and that the only threat had never been it. In the silence that followed, the pup pressed against Ellis again, seeking his heartbeat. He rested a hand on its head, his voice barely above a whisper. It's okay. You did good. The scent of ozone and adrenaline lingered in the air. Every cadet stood silent, hearts hammering under their armor. The Alpha's growl had faded into something softer, a low hum that resonated through the metal floor like distant thunder. Ellis kept his hand on the pup, his posture measured and calm. He didn't look at Gela yet. His gaze remained on the Alpha, whose chest rose and fell in great, trembling breaths. The creature was exhausted, not from exertion, but from restraint. Finally Gela spoke. His voice, once commanding, was quieter now. You overrode its aggression reflex. Ellis didn't move. No. I didn't override anything. Gela frowned, confused. Explain. I reminded it, Ellis said softly, that it wasn't alone. Fear makes everything forget, animal, human, alien. Doesn't matter. You remind something it's not alone, and the fight breaks. The Alpha turned its head slowly toward Ellis, a faint rumble in its chest, not hostile, almost inquisitive. It sniffed the air, as though memorizing him. Gela stared at the scene, jaw tightening. You're telling me you broke a Tarsk conditioning reflex with emotional suggestion? Ellis gave a small, humorless smile. I'm telling you maybe the Tarsk weren't built for killing. Maybe they were built for surviving. The difference is what we decide to feed. The cadets exchanged uncertain looks. One whispered, That's not what they taught us. No, Ellis murmured. It never is. The Alpha's tail flicked once. Then it did something no one in the room could have predicted. It lowered its massive head until its snout brushed the top of the pup's. A soft sound escaped it, low and tender. A murmur rippled through the ranks. Ellis smiled faintly beneath his visor. That's it, he whispered. You remember. The dome lights dimmed again as Geller shut off the neural emitter with a swipe of his wrist. For a moment, he just stood there, watching the impossible unfold, a war beast showing affection, guided not by control but by connection. When he finally looked back at Ellis, the sharpness in his expression had dulled into something more human. You're either the bravest man I've ever trained, he said quietly, or the most reckless fool alive. Ellis finally met his eyes. With respect, sir, he said. Sometimes those are the same thing. A few cadets chuckled nervously, but the tension didn't fade. The Alpha turned its head again, scanning the sealed door as if expecting something more. And then, its eyes flashed red. Ellis felt it before he saw it, a tremor in the floor, a faint vibration from the walls. The pup's ears went flat. The Alpha wasn't the only one reacting to the pheromone pulse. Somewhere deep in the facility, through the intercom static, came the unmistakable roar of another Tarsk. Then another. Then two more. Gella's face strained of color. That's impossible. Those pens were triple locked. Ellis rose slowly to his feet, the pup pressed against his leg. His voice was calm, but the words carried a grim edge. Sir? I think your test just went live. The first tremor was subtle, a low vibration that rolled through the floor like a breath before thunder. Then came the second, sharper, shaking dust from the corners of the dome's lights. Red strobes burst to life. Sirens wailed overhead. Containment breach detected. An automated voice echoed. Quadrant 6. Quadrant 7. Quadrant 9. The cadets turned in panic. The noise of boots, armor, and shouting filled the space. But Ellis didn't move. He could feel it, the rhythm of the approaching steps beneath the metal, heavy and measured, like an army waking up. 3 more Tarsks. Adults. Fully matured. The pheromone pulse had reached them. Gillis slammed his wrist console, trying to override the seals. Nothing responded. Control rooms cut off. Manual locks are engaged. Who engaged them? Ellis demanded. Geller didn't answer. His eyes flicked to the observation deck, and for the first time, Ellis saw fear there. Real fear. The Alpha growled again, tail lashing, pupils flaring gold in the red light. It wasn't angry, it was warning them. The pup whimpered and pressed closer to Ellis. Sir, one cadet stammered. Orders? Geller hesitated for half a heartbeat too long. Defensive formation. Non-lethal if possible. Ellis turned sharply. Non-lethal? You can't kill them. If you open fire, they'll all go feral. Then give me another option. The sound hit then, the first impact against the outer corridor doors. Metal groaned, deep and shuddering. Another strike followed, harder, bending the frame inward. The Alpha moved toward the noise, muscles rippling, a low rumble building deep in its chest. Its body language wasn't aggression. It was territorial defense. Ellis watched it, then understood. It's not trying to fight us, he said half to himself. It's trying to protect the pup. Gellis spun toward him. From what? The others? Ellis nodded slowly. The pheromone pulse didn't just trigger aggression, it triggered dominance. The others will see this one as a challenger, and the pup as prey. A final crash. The outer hatch buckled inward. The cadets raised their rifles, forming a shaky line. Ellis stepped in front of them. Don't shoot. Are you insane? Someone shouted. The door gave way. Through the smoke and screeching metal, 3 towering silhouettes emerged, larger, heavier, their hides marked with pale scars that glowed faintly under the red light. Their eyes burned with instinctual rage. The Alpha in the dome turned its head slightly toward Ellis. Their eyes met. Ellis whispered, You want to protect it? Then let's do it together. He stepped forward. No weapon. No armor raised. Only trust, and a heartbeat steady enough to be heard through the chaos. The Alpha snarled once, low and sharp, then turned back toward the breach and roared, a sound that shook the air like an ancient storm. 3 predators entered the dome, and a human stood beside one. The dome erupted into chaos. The 3 new Tarsks burst through the doorway like shadows made flesh. Huge, muscle-bound, their hides rippling with silver scars. Their eyes glowed the deep, molten hue of instinct unrestrained. The Alpha stood its ground, roaring back in a sound that was both challenge and warning. The force of it rattled the lights overhead. The pup whimpered and pressed closer to Ellis, trembling under the echoes of its kind. Ellis could feel the air shift, hot and charged, filled with the wild scent of animal terror and dominance. The new arrivals were larger than the Alpha, more brutal in shape, bred for control, not reasoning. One lowered its head and snarled, saliva sizzling on the floor like acid. The cadets raised their rifles in a panic. They're coming through, someone yelled. Hold your fire, Ellis shouted. But one cadet panicked. The sound of a plasma discharge tore through the dome, a bright arc of light striking one of the advancing Tarsks square in the shoulder. The effect was immediate. The wounded beast let out a roar that seemed to bend the air itself. The others joined in, and suddenly the dome was full of motion, claws on metal, the sound of tearing steel, the flash of teeth. The Alpha lunged forward, slamming into the nearest aggressor. The impact sent shockwaves through the deck, throwing sparks from the dome walls. The two beasts collided, snarling and biting, tails whipping like living whips. "Get back!" Geller roared, dragging cadets behind the emergency barrier. Ellis didn't move. His visor filled with sensor warnings. Elevated CO2, pressure spikes, biosignature alerts. But he stayed, kneeling beside the pup, who was keening in distress. "Hey!" Ellis whispered, grabbing its snout gently, forcing its gaze up to meet his. "You're okay. You hear me? You're okay." The pup blinked, trembling, confused by the calm in his voice. Then, astonishingly, it echoed a low growl, mimicking the tone of its alpha. The alpha heard. Even in the clash, its head turned slightly. Ellis realized something. The pup's sound wasn't random. It was signal. It wasn't fear. It was calling for unity. The alpha roared back, not at the enemy Tarsks, but at them, commanding. The sound changed. A shift in pitch. The tone carried through the dome like a deep vibration. The other Tarsks paused, confused. Their bodies twitched, muscles tense, eyes flickering with uncertainty. Ellis pressed his hand against the pup's chest. "Do it again," he murmured. "Louder this time." The pup opened its jaws and released a long, trembling call, somewhere between a howl and a heartbeat. It filled the dome, echoing against the steel. The alpha repeated the sound, deeper, resonant, controlled. For a heartbeat, the chaos stopped. Even the enraged Tarsks froze, the dominance pattern disrupted, their instincts torn between fury and obedience. The entire dome pulsed with sound, a living, breathing signal that overrode violence with recognition. Gela stared, wide-eyed. He's syncing their frequencies," he whispered. Ellis didn't respond. He only whispered to the pup. "That's it, buddy. Tell them we're not the enemy." The air fell still. The largest of the invading Tarsks stepped forward, chest heaving, head lowered. It growled once, not a threat, but a question. The alpha growled back. And impossibly, the larger beast backed away. Ellis exhaled. The alpha's breathing slowed. The pup pressed its head into his shoulder, heartbeats syncing with his own. The war between instincts had ended, not with fire or control, but with communication. Still, Gela's expression hardened. "You've calmed them," he said. "But for how long?" Ellis looked at him, then at the pack. "As long as they believe," he said softly, "that we're on the same side." When the last roar faded, the dome was left in an uncanny silence. Only the hum of containment fields and the faint rasp of heavy breathing remained. Steam rose from the floor where plasma had scorched metal, curling around the motionless figures of both beast and man. The Tarsks stood still now, the great predators of Kar's halo, chests expanding and collapsing in slow, rhythmic unison. Their red eyes no longer glowed with fury, but a dim, wary focus. The alpha had stepped back, tail twitching, posture tense but not aggressive. The pup stayed by Ellis's side, its small claws hooked gently into the fabric of his uniform as though anchoring itself to him. "Are they obeying him?" one of the cadets whispered, voice barely audible. Gela didn't answer. His gaze darted between Ellis and the alpha, suspicion and awe mingling in his expression. "They're responding to resonance," he murmured finally. "A pack frequency, low-range subsonic harmonics." The pup translated it, and the human matched it. Ellis frowned. "I didn't do anything." "Oh, you did," Gela interrupted, his tone sharp. "You matched tone, rhythm, intention. They heard that. They heard trust." The alpha let out a low, echoing rumble, a sound like gravel sliding down metal. It stepped forward, enormous frame illuminated by the cold white lights. The other Tarsks lowered their heads instinctively, deferring. Then, with unsettling slowness, the alpha turned its massive head toward Ellis. The man didn't move. Every part of his training screamed to retreat, to get behind the barrier. But something deeper, something primal, told him to stay. He met the creature's gaze. Those red eyes held intelligence, recognition. And under it all, something else, pain. The Alpha's shoulder bore deep wounds, plasma burns, jagged and raw. The beast had fought even before this skirmish. Ellis could see the trembling in its forelimb, the slight hitch in its breath. Without thinking, he spoke softly. "You're hurt." The creature tilted its head, as if listening. Ellis raised his hands slowly, palms outward, the universal gesture of peace, as old as language itself. He approached with careful steps, every instinct taut as wire. The Alpha didn't retreat. It simply watched. When he was close enough, Ellis could feel its heat, the strange warmth that wasn't just body temperature but energy, as though its blood hummed with bioluminescent current. He reached into his pack and withdrew a small medgel applicator. Behind him, Geller barked. "Ellis, that's not protocol. Neither is letting them kill us," Ellis said evenly. He crouched, moving with deliberate calm, and pressed the gel gently against the Alpha's wound. The creature flinched, rumbling deep in its chest, but didn't strike. The gel hissed as it fused into tissue, sealing charred muscle with synthetic fiber. The pup whimpered softly, the sound of reassurance, almost musical. The Alpha's breathing slowed. Then something extraordinary happened. The Alpha lowered its massive head, pressing its forehead against Ellis's shoulder. A collective gasp filled the dome. Ellis froze, the weight of the gesture hitting him harder than any command ever had. He realized, in that moment, this wasn't submission. It was acceptance. When the Alpha lifted its head again, its eyes seemed different, less alien, more aware. It looked to the pup, then to Ellis, and finally toward Geller. The soldier exhaled slowly, lowering his rifle. "I'll be damned," he muttered. "You just made a pact with a predator." Ellis glanced at the pup, who chirped once, proud and trembling. "No," he said softly. "I just told them the truth." "Which is?" Geller asked. "That we don't have to be enemies." The Alpha rumbled once. Low, resonant, almost approving. Then it turned toward the dome's main hatch and stared at it, expectant. Ellis followed its gaze. Through the reinforced glass, deep beyond the training facility, the endless expanse of Kar's halo stretched out, a storm-racked alien world lit by twin suns and fractured clouds. The Alpha growled again, more insistent. "It wants to go out there," Ellis realized. "But not alone." Geller sighed, rubbing his temples. "This is going to be hell on the chain of command." Ellis gave a faint smile. "Yeah," he said, looking up at the massive beast beside him. "But maybe it's the start of something better." The pup yipped once in agreement, tail flicking. The dome doors unsealed with a hiss, and for the first time, man and predator stood side by side, facing the storms beyond. The experiment was over. The bond had begun. The first breath outside the dome was like inhaling lightning. The air of Kar's halo was charged, metallic, sharp, alive with static currents that made Ellis's hair rise even beneath his helmet. Twin suns hung low in the amber sky, their light fractured by thick clouds that flickered with bursts of blue plasma. The Tarsks didn't flinch. They were born for this world. Their scales shimmered faintly with electrical resistance, each step igniting faint arcs between their claws and the ground. Ellis, walking beside the Alpha and the pup, felt impossibly small. Yet the pup's soft chirp behind him anchored him more than any weapon ever had. Geller's voice crackled through his calm. "Ellis, your vitals are spiking. Pull back to the airlock." "That's an order." He didn't respond. His eyes were fixed on the horizon, a range of metallic stone ridges twisting upward like frozen waves. Beyond them, a dark storm moved with terrifying speed. The Alpha's head lifted. It rumbled deep in its chest, a warning note. "They feel the storm coming," Ellis said softly. "Of course they do," Geller replied from the dome's interior. "It's charged with the same plasma that runs through their veins. The storm feeds them." Ellis frowned. "Feeds them? You'll see soon enough. Get back inside before it hits." But he didn't move. Something about the Alpha's stance made him hesitate. The creature wasn't seeking shelter, it was waiting. The wind picked up, scattering shards of dried dust that glowed faintly from electrostatic energy. The pup whined, pressed against Ellis's leg. And then, far in the distance, a bolt of blue lightning struck the ridge, not downward, but upward, ripping through the sky with an ear-splitting crack. Ellis flinched. That's not normal lightning. Nothing on Car's halo is, Gela muttered. The Alpha turned to Ellis, gaze locking on him again. It chuffed once, a sound somewhere between breath and growl, and began moving forward. Wait, where are you going? Ellis asked. The creature stopped and looked back. It was waiting for him. Ellis hesitated only a moment before following. His boots crunched on mineral shards as the wind howled around him. The pup bounded at his side, tail raised high, as if proud to escort him into the storm. The other cadets watched through the reinforced glass of the dome, murmuring nervously. He's insane, one whispered. No, Gellis said quietly. He's doing what we trained him for, to understand before he judges. As Ellis and the Tarsks reached the ridge, the ground began to vibrate. The air was a haze of ozone. He could feel the charge prickling on his skin even through his armor. Then the storm opened. Bolts of plasma cascaded across the sky, lashing down in curtains of color, blues and whites and impossible violets. The Alpha stood tall, facing it head-on, roaring into the wind. And Ellis saw it. The energy didn't strike the Tarsks. It flowed into them. Their wounds glowed faintly, knitting before his eyes. The Alpha's burned shoulder sealed, red muscle turning dark again. The creatures weren't just surviving the storm, they were feeding on it. Ellis whispered, awed, "You live off the chaos." The pup chirped and pawed at the lightning that danced around its claws. Then something shifted in the light, a deeper flash within the storm clouds. A shape. Moving. Watching. Ellis blinked. "Commander, are you seeing that?" Static swallowed Geller's voice. "Say again, Ellis. Signal. Interference." The Alpha turned sharply toward the sky, growling low. The storm wasn't natural. Something was inside it. Ellis felt the ground tremble beneath his boots. The pup pressed itself close to him, trembling not with fear, but recognition. Whatever lived in the storm, the Tarsks already knew it. And it was coming closer. The wind screamed like metal tearing in half. Ellis braced himself, one hand gripping the jagged edge of a stone outcrop as the sky split open. The storm's color shifted, blue lightning bleeding into a furious crimson that danced through the clouds like veins under translucent skin. The Alpha let out a thunderous roar that shook the ridge. The pup echoed weakly beside it, ears flat, body pressed against Ellis's leg. Something moved within the storm. Not a shadow. No, this thing was made of light and dust, its shape constantly breaking and reforming. For a moment, it resembled a massive winged creature, then a shifting lattice of metallic tendrils, then something humanoid but colossal, suspended in plasma. "Gela!" Ellis shouted into his comm. "Something's in the storm!" Static answered, nothing else. The dome was a silent speck of glass far below, its lights barely visible through the electric haze. The Alpha barked once, a deep, commanding sound that sent the smaller Tarsks scattering to defensive positions. They moved with instinctive precision, forming a semicircle around Ellis and the pup. The shape in the storm dropped lower. When it opened what looked like wings, the lightning bent around them like ribbons drawn by gravity. Ellis's HUD flickered violently, systems going offline one by one. "EMP surge," he muttered. "It's killing every circuit." Then the thing spoke. The voice didn't come from the air. It came from inside his skull. "Who calls upon the storm?" Ellis froze. His eyes darted toward the Alpha, but the creature was growling, head lowered, teeth bared. It heard it too. "Who takes the blood of the sky?" Ellis gritted his teeth. "Identify yourself!" he shouted, though his voice was almost lost to the howling wind. "You are not of the pact," the voice hissed. "You carry the scent of machines. The old enemies." Ellis felt his heartbeat quicken. The old enemies? He looked to the Alpha. The creature was trembling, not in fear but in readiness. The Tarsks knew this thing. They had fought it before. The plasma in the sky condensed suddenly, forming a jagged figure, something between predator and god, its form too vast to comprehend. Its face, if it had one, was a shifting void where lightning flared and vanished. Ellis's chest tightened. "What are you?" The storm answered with silence, then a sudden explosion of thunder that nearly threw him to the ground. The Alpha lunged forward, claws digging into rock. The beast's eyes burned bright red, its scales flickering with arcs of light. The other Tarsks roared in unison. Not in rage, but in defiance. Ellis realized what was happening. This wasn't a storm, it was a hunt. The entity's lightning spears crashed down, striking the ground where the pack had stood moments before. Stone vaporized into molten glass. The Alpha leapt aside, grabbing Ellis by the arm with terrifying gentleness and pulling him back from the edge. The human stumbled, gasping. "You're protecting me?" The Alpha looked at him, and for a moment, Ellis swore he could hear its thoughts, not in words, but in emotion: trust, danger, kin. Then, with a final roar, the creature turned to the storm and charged. Lightning wrapped around its body like chains, burning but not consuming. The sky turned to a battlefield of light, the Alpha's silhouette against an ancient thing of energy and hate. The pup whimpered, wanting to follow, but Ellis held it back. "No," he said, voice breaking. "Not yet." The ground cracked beneath them as shockwaves tore through the ridge. The storm god, if that's what it was, recoiled, its form fracturing. And for the first time, Ellis saw fear in lightning. The Alpha's roar shook the heavens. Then the world went white. Ellis's ears rang. The world had gone blinding white, a blizzard of electric light and deafening sound. He shielded his eyes with one arm while holding the pup close with the other. The ridge trembled beneath them as shards of stone and metal clattered down into the abyss below. Through the flash, he could barely make out the Alpha. Its massive frame seemed to shimmer in and out of existence, outlined by arcs of plasma that licked the storm around it. The pup clung to his side, ears flattened, tiny claws digging into his armor. A deep vibration reverberated through the ground, not thunder, not wind, but something alive, ancient, and sentient. Every instinct in Ellis screamed. They were being observed, evaluated, hunted. Then came the voice again, low and rolling, resonating in his mind. "Why do you interfere with the hunt?" Ellis swallowed, trying to steady himself. I'm protecting the young one," he shouted into the storm, though the words might have been carried into his own skull as much as anywhere else. The Alpha's growl rumbled like a drum. It pressed its body closer to Ellis, shielding him, the pup, and the ridge itself. Its eyes locked with the distant energy shape in the storm, those molten, shifting eyes of the entity, and the air vibrated with tension. The storm pulsed again, but this time the lightning followed the Alpha's movements. Each step it took left arcs dancing across the ridge, converging on the creature in the storm, almost as if the Tarsk itself had become a conductor of energy. Ellis's heart hammered. What is it doing?" The pup chirped nervously. Its small body shivered as it watched the sky. Ellis realized that even the young Tarsk sensed what he did, that the Alpha wasn't just fighting, it was communicating. The entity in the storm recoiled, forms flickering. For a moment, its shape fragmented completely, leaving only the roiling clouds of violet and crimson plasma. Then, with a deafening crack, it reformed, larger, more furious, tentacle-like limbs arcing toward the ridge. The Alpha charged. Ellis stumbled but didn't let go of the pup. The beast roared, the sound vibrating through the very air, and the ridge seemed to respond, stone groaning, dust and energy swirling in response to the Alpha's resonance. The storm entity struck. Lightning lances hissed toward the ridge, and the Alpha met them head-on. Plasma struck the creature's back, hissed across its hide, but it didn't falter. Every strike it absorbed was channeled outward, arcs of light dancing back into the storm in a feedback loop that shimmered against the sky. Ellis pressed the pup closer, eyes wide. The realization hit him like ice. The Alpha was not just defending, it was fighting the storm on their terms. The pup chirped again, a sound of wonder and trust. Ellis whispered, almost to himself, "You're incredible." And the storm seemed to listen. The whiteout finally began to waver, tiny specks of shadow and color piercing the blinding storm. Lightning still danced across the ridge, but it now followed a rhythm, a pulse that matched the alpha's roars and growls. Ellis stumbled forward, supporting the pup as he took in the surreal scene. The alpha moved deliberately, its claws gripping the jagged stone, each step sending arcs of energy outward, pushing back the violent plasma that threatened to consume everything. The pup pressed its small form against Ellis's side, chirping softly, a signal, or perhaps a plea. The entity in the storm hesitated. Its shifting form pulsated with violent red and violet currents, reacting to the alpha's controlled resonance. It had been challenged, and for the first time, it seemed to calculate rather than strike blindly. Ellis's HUD flickered. Bioreadings spiked, his heart rate and adrenaline were off the charts. Yet he remained still, letting the pup lean against him, letting the alpha shield him. Every instinct screamed to flee, but he trusted the creature. The alpha roared again, this time a deep, rolling sound that echoed like tectonic plates shifting. Lightning bent toward the ridge in arcs of precision, striking near the entity without touching it directly. Each strike sent ripples through the storm, breaking apart small chunks of plasma and energy like a sculptor shaping molten metal. Ellis whispered, "It's controlling it." The pup chirped in agreement, tail twitching with excitement. Even in its youth, it seemed to recognize the significance of the moment, that the predator beside him wasn't just fighting for survival but imposing order on chaos. From somewhere deep within the storm, a vibration penetrated the ridge. Low, almost musical, like the resonance of a cathedral bell. The alpha's eyes narrowed, pupils constricting. Its growl modulated in response, a dialogue between living predator and storm. Ellis swallowed hard. "You're talking to it," he murmured. The storm entity pulsed violently, tendrils of plasma twisting, then slowly retracting. The alpha advanced, every movement precise, its roars shaping the energy around them. It wasn't aggression. It was command. Control through resonance. For the first time, Ellis realized that the alpha, and by extension the pup, was communicating in a language of pure instinct and energy. "Unbelievable," he breathed. "It's teaching it negotiation, not just combat." The storm's pulses began to slow, its chaotic lashes folding inward, forming patterns. The energy that had threatened to consume the ridge now shimmered like a controlled current, bending to the alpha's will. The pup chirped again, higher this time, joining in with the alpha's rumbling tones. Their combined resonance made the storm quiver and retreat slightly, a tentative ceasefire, dictated by the oldest rules of predator and pack. Ellis felt a shiver of awe run through him. He wasn't just witnessing survival. He was witnessing evolution in action, instinct shaped by trust, fear tempered by communication. Behind him, the ridge hummed faintly, reacting to the living orchestra of energy and sound. The alpha's chest heaved, muscles trembling with exertion, yet it remained steadfast, guarding the pup, guarding him. And slowly, the storm began to pull back, its violence diminishing under the steady dominance of primal intelligence. Ellis exhaled, exhausted. "You did it! You actually did it!" The pup chirped in triumph, pressing into his shoulder. The alpha growled softly, a sound that seemed like pride rather than threat. Ellis looked up at the storm above them. For the first time, it seemed respectful. The wind finally began to die down. The twin suns peeked through fractured clouds, casting jagged shadows across the ridge. The storm's fury had subsided, leaving only the crackle of residual energy arcing faintly across the metallic terrain. Ellis knelt beside the pup, who shook itself and chirped, tail wagging in nervous excitement. He ran a hand through the young creature's fur, feeling its rapid heartbeats slow against his glove. The alpha loomed nearby, body still trembling from exertion, hide faintly glowing where lightning had arced over it. Its amber eyes scanned the horizon, vigilant, yet no longer hostile. Each movement was precise, measured, an embodiment of controlled power. Ellis exhaled deeply, exhaustion settling into his muscles. He hadn't thought he'd survive the storm, let alone witness this display. The pup pressed against his chest, chirping softly. "Yeah, buddy," he murmured. "You did good too." Far below, the cadets remained trapped behind the dome glass, staring up in stunned silence. Geller's expression was a mixture of awe, frustration, and something else Ellis couldn't place, a rare flicker of respect. "Ellis," the commander said finally, voice low, hesitant. I underestimated them. And you?" Ellis shrugged, brushing dirt from his knees. "It wasn't me. It was them. They just needed someone who wouldn't fight back to show them we're not a threat." Geller looked away, rubbing his temples. "Your methods defy protocol. I don't know how you survived." "Luck," Ellis said, though he knew it wasn't. It was trust, and instinct, and patience. All the things his training could never teach him. The alpha moved closer, nudging the pup with its snout. The pup chirped again and nuzzled its parent, tail flicking. The predator turned its massive head toward Ellis, as if acknowledging him. Ellis allowed himself a small, tired smile. He had walked into a storm thinking it would break him. Instead, he had walked out with allies he could barely comprehend, allies shaped by instinct and intelligence far older than humanity. A low rumble echoed across the ridge. The alpha's attention shifted slightly, ears twitching. In the distance, the storm clouds were reforming, gathering energy again, yet not with the same rage. It was waiting, watching, aware. Ellis stood, brushing himself off. The pup jumped up eagerly, chirping insistently. "All right, buddy, time to move." The alpha's growl responded softly, a sound that almost felt like agreement. It turned toward the horizon, back straight, posture commanding. Ellis followed, pup in tow, feeling a rare thrill of hope. The ridge stretched ahead, jagged and alien, but no longer threatening. Behind them, the cadets murmured in disbelief. Geller said nothing, only watched as the human and his Tarsk companions moved into the wilds beyond the storm, a man and a pack, bound not by fear, but by choice. And somewhere deep in the clouds above, the storm pulsed once more. But this time, it did not strike. It waited. For the alpha, the pup, and the human who had learned to speak in a language older than words. Ellis took a deep breath of the charged air, feeling alive in a way he never had before. The world was bigger than he had imagined, stranger than protocol, and infinitely more beautiful, if only you knew how to listen. The pup chirped again, tugging at his hand, eager to explore. Ellis smiled, letting it lead the way. They moved forward, into the unknown. The ridge gave way to a vast plateau, littered with jagged rock spires and metallic outcroppings that glinted faintly under the twin suns. Kar's halo stretched endlessly, a landscape of sharp edges and rolling mists that shimmered with ambient electrical energy. Ellis kept the pup close, hand brushing over its fur, feeling the rapid pulse of its excitement and fear. Behind them, the alpha moved like a living shield, body taut and ready, scanning every shadow and ridge for threats. The wind was calmer now, carrying with it faint scents of alien flora, pungent, metallic, and sweet all at once. The air hummed faintly with residual energy from the storm, and every step Ellis took sent a subtle vibration through the ridge, resonating with the creature's senses. He glanced at the pup, who chirped and bounded forward, tail high, clearly intrigued by the strange environment. The alpha followed, steps slow and measured, watching both human and pup with the same watchful intelligence. Ellis realized he was no longer leading. The alpha moved as a guide, instinctively showing them paths that were safe and alerting them to unseen dangers. It was a partnership now, not predator and prey, but allies sharing the wild. A low rumble echoed from the far edge of the plateau. Ellis froze, instincts kicking in. The alpha stiffened, tail twitching, ears rotating toward the sound. Another rumble followed, this one deeper, closer. "More of them?" he whispered to the pup, who pressed against his side, tiny claws digging into his armor. The alpha growled softly in response, muscles coiling. It was warning, not threat. They were aware of something beyond the ridge, something old and patient. Ellis followed the alpha's lead, stepping carefully along the plateau. Crystalline formations jutted from the ground, faintly humming with energy, reacting to the electrical charge still lingering in the air. The pup sniffed curiously at one, chirping excitedly, and the alpha nudged it gently away with a massive snout, guiding it along. Hours seemed to pass as they traversed the plateau, the sun dipping lower and casting long, fractured shadows across the terrain. Ellis's boots crunched against alien rock and metallic sand, each step measured, each breath conscious. Finally, they reached a cliff overlooking a valley glowing faintly with luminescent plants and streams of conductive mineral liquid. The alpha stopped, eyes scanning the valley, body tense. Ellis understood. This was the next stage of their journey. They were moving deeper into the wilds, away from the dome, away from safety. He took a deep breath, feeling the pulse of the plateau beneath him, the charge in the air resonating with the heartbeat of the alpha and the pup. "All right, buddy," he whispered to the pup, who chirped eagerly. "Let's see what's out there." The alpha let out a soft rumble, almost like a confirmation. And together, human and pack began their descent into the glowing valley, stepping into a world that was alive, unpredictable, and waiting for them. The valley stretched before them like a living cathedral. Bioluminescent flora swayed gently despite the lack of wind, casting shifting patterns of cyan, violet, and gold across the rocky terrain. Streams of molten-like liquid reflected the light in iridescent waves, hissing softly where they met rock formations. Ellis paused at the edge, taking in the sight. The pup chirped excitedly, hopping along the edge of the cliff and peering into the valley below. The alpha lowered itself to the ground, cautious but unafraid, scanning every shadow for danger. "This place," Ellis whispered. "It's alive." The alpha's growl was soft, almost contemplative. Its eyes followed the movement of a shadow flitting across the valley floor. A creature, smaller than the alpha, quadrupedal, fur glinting with faint metallic streaks, emerged, sniffing the air. It froze when it saw the alpha, then bowed slightly before retreating. Ellis's heart raced. "They recognize it?" he asked. The pup chirped in response, tail wagging. The alpha's presence commanded respect. Every living thing in the valley seemed to sense its dominance, or its alliance with them. The storm from before had been a trial, and this valley was the reward, a world alive, yet obedient to the law of the pack. Ellis stepped forward carefully, letting the pup run ahead. The creature's fur crackled faintly with residual static from the storm, and Ellis could feel the energy in the air vibrating against his chest. Every instinct told him to stay still, yet the valley called to him, inviting him deeper. Suddenly, the molten streams hissed louder, and a shadow moved beneath the iridescent surface. A massive creature rose, liquid and solid fused, with glowing eyes and limbs that shimmered in the valley's eerie light. It didn't roar, it stared. The alpha growled deeply, body coiling like a spring. The pup whimpered but pressed against Ellis's leg, sensing his calm. Ellis understood immediately. They weren't just encountering predators. This was a test. A living puzzle of dominance, survival, and trust. He raised a hand, palm outward. "Easy," he whispered, to both the alpha and the molten creature. "We mean no harm." The alpha's growl softened slightly, but the molten creature didn't respond. Instead, it shifted, circling them, analyzing, testing the boundaries of the ridge. Ellis's mind raced. "It's intelligent," he murmured. "Like the alpha. It's testing us." The pup chirped again, bravely stepping forward to the edge. The molten creature's gaze followed it, tilting its head curiously. The alpha pressed itself slightly forward, a protective barrier between Ellis and the unknown. Ellis exhaled, feeling the weight of the moment. This valley wasn't just a habitat. It was a trial ground, a crucible of the wilds where instincts met intelligence. And they were standing in the center of it, a human, a pup, an alpha, and the strange molten sentinel, all coexisting on the razor's edge between fear and trust. Ellis whispered to himself, voice barely audible over the soft hum of the valley. "We're not just visitors here. We're participants." The pup chirped in agreement, and the alpha's rumble echoed like a low drum, signaling the beginning of their descent into the unknown heart of the valley. Ellis took a cautious step down into the valley, feeling the strange hum of the ground beneath his boots. The pup scurried ahead, sniffing at glowing plants and hopping over streams of molten-like liquid. The alpha followed closely, its massive frame moving with careful deliberation, eyes scanning for danger. The molten creature shifted, rippling with energy as it observed them. Its form wasn't fixed, limbs extended and contracted like living plasma, and its eyes glowed a deep, molten red that seemed to pierce Ellis's very thoughts. Yet there was no aggression in its stance, only watchfulness, like a sentinel assessing intruders. Ellis raised a hand, palm open, repeating the universal gesture of peace. "We come in friendship," he said softly. The pup chirped in response, tail wagging. The alpha let out a low rumble, growling in caution but not attack, pressing itself slightly in front of Ellis as if to shield him. The molten creature responded, tilting its head. Sparks of energy danced across its form as it moved closer, curious yet wary. Ellis could feel the static in the air intensify, prickling his skin through the suit. Then the pup leapt forward, chirping boldly, and nudged the creature's leg. A ripple of energy spread across the creature, and for a moment it froze, then recoiled slightly. It wasn't aggression, it was recognition. The pup had dared to make contact, and the creature had acknowledged it. Ellis stepped forward carefully. "Good," he whispered. "They understand, somehow." The alpha growled softly and nudged the pup back, just enough to keep it safe. Ellis reached out slowly, hand trembling as he extended it toward the molten creature. The air shimmered, electricity dancing between them. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, a tendril of plasma-like energy extended from the creature, touching Ellis's glove lightly. The sensation was sharp but not painful, like a pulse of understanding. Ellis inhaled, realizing this wasn't just contact. It was communication. The creature was acknowledging them, testing their intent, sensing their trust. The pup chirped happily, pressing closer to Ellis, while the alpha lowered its massive head, almost in approval. Ellis whispered, "We're okay. They're okay with us." The molten creature pulsed again, ripples of energy spreading across the valley. The plants shimmered brighter, the streams of mineral liquid glowed more vividly, as if the valley itself recognized the truce. Ellis looked at the alpha, then the pup, then the creature. The unspoken understanding was clear, they had passed the first test of the wilds. And yet, somewhere deep in the valley, a shadow shifted, too large, too deliberate to be random. Ellis sensed it, a presence watching, waiting, stronger than any single predator. He swallowed hard. "We're not alone here," he murmured. The alpha growled low, tail flicking. The pup chirped, ears twitching. And the valley pulsed around them, alive and aware. The valley's glow cast long, twisting shadows across the terrain, and Ellis felt a tension in the air that went beyond residual storm energy. Something large moved beneath the glowing flora, its presence heavy and deliberate. The alpha's muscles coiled, tail flicking with heightened awareness, while the pup pressed itself against Ellis's leg, ears flattened. From the far side of the valley, the shadow emerged. A massive creature, easily twice the size of the alpha, its form shifting between solidity and energy like the molten sentinel but darker, more menacing. Its eyes glowed faintly violet, a stark contrast to the alpha's red and the molten creature's molten hues. Ellis froze. The alpha growled, a low, rolling sound that vibrated through the ridge, while the pup chirped nervously. The newcomer didn't roar, it simply moved with quiet authority, as though the valley itself obeyed its will. "Ellis!" Geller's voice crackled in his calm, though static made it barely audible. "Do you see it? What is that thing?" I don't know," Ellis replied, voice tight. "It's alive, but not like anything we've studied. It's intelligent, and it knows we're here." The alpha stepped forward, stance firm, chest puffed. The pup ran slightly ahead, chirping defiantly. The molten creature pulsed, rippling with energy as it observed the shadow. Ellis understood immediately. This was a test, not of strength, but of alliances and trust. The Alpha was ready to defend, but it wasn't seeking unnecessary violence. It was asserting control, showing dominance without outright aggression. The shadow halted, tilting its head as if appraising them. Electricity danced across its body, feeding into the valley, into the streams of molten minerals and the bioluminescent flora. The ground beneath them hummed in response. Ellis felt the pulse in his chest. Every instinct screamed to flee, but he stood his ground. The pup chirped, tail high, clearly sensing his courage. The shadow pulsed again, a vibration that resonated through the valley like a warning. The Alpha growled, raising its head and letting out a sound that echoed across the cliffs, not a roar, but a deep, commanding resonance. The molten creature shifted closer to Ellis, pulsing its energy tendrils in alignment with the Alpha, almost forming a protective barrier. It was as if the three of them, human, Alpha, and Sentinel, were linked, a single unit against the unknown. The shadow advanced slowly, deliberate, each step sending ripples across the valley floor. Lightning arced along its limbs, and the bioluminescent flora dimmed as if sensing threat. Ellis whispered to the pup, "Stay close, stay calm." The Alpha growled low again, chest vibrating, and the pup chirped, harmonizing with the sound in instinctive imitation. The valley pulsed with energy, responding to the resonance. The shadow stopped, scanning, and then, astonishingly, it tilted its massive head slightly, acknowledging the Alpha and, by extension, Ellis. For a moment, time hung suspended in the electric haze of the valley. It was a standoff, but not a battle. A test of wills, a silent negotiation between predator, human, and something far older. Ellis exhaled slowly, realizing the truth. They weren't just surviving here. They were learning the rules of the wild. And the shadow had accepted the Alpha as their mediator. The pup chirped triumphantly, tail flicking, and the Alpha's growl softened, almost a purr of approval. Ellis swallowed hard. "We're making allies, maybe even friends." But deep in the shadow's shifting form, he sensed intelligence far beyond understanding, waiting, observing, and judging. The shadow remained at the far edge of the valley, silent yet commanding, as the Alpha led Ellis and the pup deeper into the luminescent wilderness. Every step carried the low hum of the valley beneath them, vibrating in harmony with the creature's instincts. The molten sentinel trailed behind, pulsating faintly, ensuring that no harm would come to the human or the young Tarsk. The Alpha moved with purpose, guiding them toward a narrow canyon where jagged crystalline formations formed a natural archway. Through the shimmering light, Ellis could make out what looked like an entrance carved into the rock, subtle, almost hidden, as if the valley itself wanted it concealed. "This might be a shelter," Ellis murmured, sensing a faint trace of electrical energy radiating from the chamber. The pup chirped excitedly, tail flicking, as it bounded ahead to investigate. As they entered, the air shifted. The crystalline walls hummed softly, resonating with a deep, almost musical frequency. Streams of molten-like liquid ran along grooves in the stone, reflecting patterns of light that danced across the chamber. The Alpha paused at the center, sniffing the air, muscles coiled, ready for anything. Ellis crouched beside the pup, letting it sniff and explore. "It's safe, for now," he whispered. The Alpha gave a low growl, not of warning, but of approval, signaling that the chamber was suitable for rest and observation. As Ellis's eyes adjusted, he noticed carvings etched into the crystalline walls. They weren't random scratches, they formed patterns, symbols that pulsed faintly with the same energy that ran through the valley. Some resembled Tarsk-like forms, others the molten sentinel, and even the shadow. "The valley itself has a history," Ellis said softly, tracing a finger over the carvings. "It's telling stories." The pup chirped and padded over to the Alpha, pressing against its massive side. The Alpha lowered its head, allowing the young Tarsk to nuzzle against it. The molten sentinel hovered near the chamber's entrance, energy tendrils lightly brushing the walls, illuminating more of the carvings as if activating a display. Ellis felt a strange sense of calm settle over him. For the first time since the storm, he felt connected, to the Alpha, the pup, the sentinel, and even the shadow lurking in the distance. The valley wasn't just alive. It was sentient, aware of who belonged and who didn't, testing and guiding all who entered. Suddenly, a low vibration emanated from deeper within the chamber. The alpha's ears twitched, muscles tensing. The pup whimpered, pressing against Ellis. From the far end of the chamber, a faint glow pulsed rhythmically. Shapes shifted in the crystalline walls, almost like eyes watching, assessing. The molten sentinel's tendrils stiffened, brushing the walls with increasing intensity. Ellis swallowed. Something's here, inside. The alpha let out a soft, commanding rumble, stepping forward protectively. The pup chirped bravely, tail high, but pressed close to Ellis's leg. The chamber was more than a shelter, it was a gateway. Something ancient, waiting within the crystalline walls, had sensed their arrival. Ellis's heart pounded. This is what the storm was leading us to. The alpha growled, low and resonant, as if echoing the unspoken truth. Whatever lay ahead, they would face it together. Ellis moved cautiously toward the glowing end of the chamber, the pup pressed firmly against his leg. The alpha prowled ahead, massive paws tapping softly against the crystalline floor, every step deliberate. The molten sentinel's tendrils traced patterns across the walls, illuminating symbols that seemed to shift and rearrange as if alive. At the center of the chamber lay a massive crystalline structure, pulsating with vibrant energy. Its glow radiated in waves, casting fractal patterns across the walls. Ellis felt the air thrum against his skin, resonating deep within his chest. Every instinct screamed this was the heart of the valley, the source of the energy that had guided the alpha, the pup, and the sentinel. The alpha approached the structure, head lowered. Its eyes glimmered with reverence, and it pressed one claw against the crystal. The energy pulsed in response, flowing through the creature's body like an electric current. The pup chirped, hopping forward to nuzzle against the alpha, tail wagging. Ellis hesitated, hand hovering over the crystalline surface. "It's alive," he whispered, voice barely audible. "It's a living entity." The molten sentinel coiled around the crystal, tendrils brushing against its facets. Sparks of energy jumped between sentinel and heart, weaving a web of light that seemed to bind the chamber together. The alpha growled softly, chest vibrating in harmony with the pulses, and the pup joined in with a chirp that echoed across the chamber. Ellis realized then that the three creatures, alpha, pup, and sentinel, were communicating with the heart, not through words, but through resonance. Energy, instinct, and trust intertwined, forming a dialogue older than language. The crystal pulsed brighter, then split into fractal beams of light that reached toward the ceiling. Shadows danced across the walls, taking shapes that mimicked the forms of the alpha, the pup, the sentinel, and even the storm shadow from the ridge. It was a vision, a memory of the valley itself, showing its guardians, its challenges, and its rules. Ellis's eyes widened. It's teaching us," he whispered. "Everything we've seen, everything we've survived, it's a lesson." The pup chirped excitedly, nudging him forward, and Ellis followed the creatures as they guided him closer to the core. The air vibrated with energy, warm yet electrifying, and he could feel the heartbeat of the valley in every pulse. A low rumble echoed through the chamber, deeper than any growl or roar. It resonated through Ellis's bones. The alpha's eyes locked on him, communicating a single, unspoken message: "We are part of this now." The molten sentinel pulsed rapidly, signaling the completion of a cycle, while the pup chirped in triumphant harmony. The heart of the valley acknowledged them, human and Tarsk alike, as worthy, as participants in its living legacy. Ellis swallowed, overwhelmed. "We belong here. Somehow." The shadow from the ridge had not followed them into the chamber, but Ellis knew it was still observing, waiting for the next step, the next test. The alpha nudged him gently forward, eyes gleaming. The pup chirped, tail high, and the molten sentinel pulsed rhythmically. Ellis took a deep breath and stepped closer to the crystal heart, feeling its energy flow through him. He was no longer just a visitor. He was a part of the valley, a participant in a living, breathing, electric ecosystem that spanned predator, pack, and human alike. The heart pulsed, and Ellis realized the adventure had only just begun. The crystal heart's pulses resonated through Ellis's entire body, syncing with his heartbeat, his breath, even the pup's rapid chirps. He could feel it, not just in his mind, but deep within his bones, a connection to the valley, the Alpha, the molten sentinel, and even the lessons of the storm. The Alpha stood beside him, massive and vigilant, eyes glowing softly as it absorbed the energy from the heart. Its presence radiated power tempered by trust, a living embodiment of balance between predator and guardian. The pup chirped brightly, bounding in a circle before returning to Ellis's side, tail high in unrestrained joy. Ellis extended his hand and allowed a fingertip to brush against the crystal. A jolt of energy shot through him, sharp yet invigorating. He felt the valley's history, the guardianship of countless creatures, the storms survived, the lessons learned, all coursing through him in raw, undeniable clarity. The molten sentinel coiled near the crystal, energy rippling along its form. It pulsed in rhythm with the Alpha, forming a web of energy that connected all four of them: human, pup, Alpha, and sentinel. The valley itself seemed to breathe, its light swelling and ebbing like a heartbeat. Ellis whispered, We're part of this." The words felt small compared to the enormity of what he was experiencing, yet true. The valley had accepted him, had tested him, and had now intertwined his life with its own. Outside the chamber, the storm shadow watched silently, acknowledging their victory without aggression. It pulsed once, a reminder of the challenges still awaiting beyond the valley's heart. The Alpha growled softly, a sound of assurance. They were ready. Ellis knelt, letting the pup climb onto his shoulder. Its chirps were bright, filled with the simple joy of survival and trust. The Alpha nudged him gently, a sign of respect, of understanding, of partnership. The valley's hum resonated in harmony with their pulse, the crystalline walls glowing brighter, illuminating the chamber in a cascade of colors. Ellis realized then that the true power of this place wasn't just energy or predator dominance. It was connection, understanding, harmony between beings of vastly different forms and instincts. He rose, the pup perched confidently on his shoulder, and looked at the Alpha. The creature's gaze met his, intense yet patient. No words were needed. They had shared the trials, the storms, and now the heart of the valley itself. They were allies, partners, a new pack that spanned species. Ellis took a deep breath, letting the energy of the valley fill him. "We'll explore together," he whispered. "We'll learn together. And we'll face whatever comes next, together." The Alpha rumbled in agreement, and the pup chirped in spirited affirmation. The molten sentinel pulsed once more, signaling the bond had been sealed. The chamber vibrated gently, as if the valley itself had exhaled, satisfied. Outside, the storm had calmed, shadows retreating to observe from afar. Ellis smiled, finally understanding what it meant to be part of something greater than himself. Here, in the alien wilds, among creatures both fierce and wise, he had found belonging, trust, and the promise of adventure yet to come. Together, they turned toward the heart of the valley, ready to step into the unknown, unified by instinct, trust, and the pulse of life itself. The valley hummed in response, alive, aware, and welcoming.